Is everybody ready? This is the 2-minute warning.
Ready here.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hereby call this meeting of the Washington Metropolitan Metro Rail Safety Commission to order. This meeting is being recorded as well as streamed live for the public. Ms. Silbaugh, do we have a quorum today?
Excuse my delay. Sorry, I was trying to unmute properly. Yes, Chair Hart, we do have a quorum. Participating in the meeting this afternoon are yourself, of course, as Chair, Secretary Treasurer Farrar Dyke, Commissioners Bob, Rouse, Conklin, Higgins, and DeBrule. Commissioner DeBrule will be a voting member today.
Thank you, Ms. Silbaugh. Welcome to our new commissioners and alternate commissioners. We look forward to working with them. We will start today with our safety message from Emergency Management Specialist Richard David. Mr. David.
Thank you, Chair Hart. October is National Protect Your Hearing Month. The CDC notes that exposures to loud noise or certain chemicals can damage your hearing. Noise-induced hearing loss can be permanent, but is also preventable. Take steps to protect yourselves and our colleagues. This can mean reducing the amount of noise around you, using hearing protection, or just turning down the volume when listening to music. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. David. We will now move on to the minutes from our previous meeting. Secretary Treasurer Farrar Dyke, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. The minutes of August 8th, 2023 meeting were posted for review. I confirmed with our general counsel that it is appropriate for commissioners to vote even if they did not attend the August 8th meeting. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes? If not, I move approval of the August 8th minutes as circulated. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Conklin has seconded the motion. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say yay.
Yay.
Any opposed? Please raise your hand and say nay.
So I apologize. I'm trying to get everybody on my screen, but I believe that was a unanimous vote of all of the commissioners, and therefore the motion to adopt the minutes as presented passes.
Thank you, Ms. Farrar Dyke and Ms. Silbaugh. Next on our agenda today is that we provide an opportunity for public comments at each of our meetings. To ensure that we recognize all who wish to speak, we provided an opportunity for those who have joined the Zoom meeting to sign up on the chat below. If you wish to speak but did not sign in, please do so now. I would also remind everyone, including those of you who are watching on YouTube, that you can always report any safety concerns through our website, wmsc.gov, through our social media channels, or by email. Ms. Minor, do we have anyone who has indicated that they would like to speak today?
No, Chair Hart, I see no hands.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Minor. We will now continue with the next agenda item, which is my remarks. I'll start by welcoming once again our new commissioners and thanking the departing commissioners who have each provided such valuable collaboration, expertise, and insight over the course of their terms. Outgoing Commissioners Mike Rush and Suhair Al-Kahib contributed greatly to the WMSC's development and effective oversight. We appreciate their work and wish them the best in the future. I'm glad to welcome our new colleagues to the WMSC, and I appreciate the expertise and experience that each of you brings to the commission. In their order of appointments over the last several weeks, I'd first like to welcome Devin Rouse, who has served as a leader at the Federal Railroad Administration and is a registered professional engineer. Second, welcome to Christopher Conklin, the director of the Montgomery County Department of Transportation and another licensed professional engineer. Third, Kitty Higgins is a former member of the National Transportation Safety Board. She has also served in other roles such as Deputy Secretary of Labor. And finally, Jennifer DeBruhl is the director of the Virginia Department of Rail and Public Transportation, serves as the chair of the Virginia Passenger Rail Authority, and has worked in the Virginia Department of Transportation and Federal Highway Administration. Ms. Higgins and Ms. DeBruhl are alternate commissioners. We look forward to your full participation in all aspects of our work and to your votes whenever a commissioner from your jurisdiction is unable to attend and vote. Because Commissioner Laube is absent, Commissioner DeBruhl will be voting today. Our meeting today includes updates on the WMSC's ongoing safety oversight activities and the activities that we take on a daily basis to help ensure that Metro Rail upholds its safety commitments and strives to continuously improve the safety of its system. I want to thank the WMSC staff for their ongoing oversight work on behalf of the region across Metro Rail subject areas. Metro Rail's overarching commitments are embodied in its Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan and the policies, procedures, and rules that flow from that plan. In our role as the state safety oversight agency, we must consider Metro Rail's revisions to its agency safety plan before those changes go into effect. Under our program standard and federal regulation, Metro Rail must review its plan at least annually. Later in the meeting, we will consider that annual revision developed by Metro Rail. We will also hear updates on audits and corrective action plan oversight, discuss our active work overseeing Metro Rail's safety certification process, and consider safety event investigations. Commissioners also have had the opportunity to review and will vote on transmitting the WMSC's draft fiscal year 2025 work program and budget to our jurisdictional funding partners. Dr. Meyer, do you have any opening remarks?
Yes, sir, I do. I join you in welcoming our new commissioners, and on behalf of the entire staff, we look forward to working with each of you. Since the last meeting, the WMSC staff have continued our work overseeing Metro Rail and ensuring that Metro Rail carries out its safety commitments. Following our feedback over the summer as part of our in-depth review of Metro Rail's safety certification work on its automatic door operation and automatic train operation, Metro Rail made adjustments to better align with its safety requirements and industry best practices. Metro Rail has focused its current work on automatic door operations on the Red Line. Automatic door operations is separate from automatic train operation, and Metro Rail's current focus is on automatic door operation. As an example of our ongoing work, Metro Rail hosted WMSC staff last month at a workshop. We greatly appreciate Metro Rail's hard work in preparing for that meeting. And last week, Metro Rail sufficiently completed its safety certification work to permit limited use of automatic door operation on the Red Line for train operator certification. Our team conducted inspections during the initial train operator certifications, and as always, we communicated issues we observed to Metro Rail so that they can be addressed. We expect our positive working relationships with Metro Rail to continue throughout this process. Moving to the September 29th derailment on a bridge south of Reagan National Airport Station, a WMSC team went to the derailment scene and coordinated with Metro Rail on the investigative response. A train collided with a brake disc lying against the running rail, leading to the derailment of the lead axle. Riders on the train were evacuated using a rescue train that Metro Rail pulled up behind the derailed train to move riders back to the station. The brake disc had come from a prior train and came to rest against the running rail. The WMSC assured that Metro Rail identified that prior train and held that train in place at the end of the line until it was inspected and documented. The WMSC also ensured that evidence was collected on scene. Metro Rail later re-railed the train that had derailed and conducted track repairs on this elevated structure over the following days. Our investigation team continues to work with Metro Rail personnel, and we've shared information with Metro Rail regarding brake disc failures from the early 2010s to be factored into the investigation as appropriate. Metro Rail conducted special checks of the bolts on each of the 2000 and 3000 series rail cars in the days after this event. Metro Rail identified that 87 of the 352 active cars had one or more loose or broken bolts. We observed some of these checks in railcar maintenance shops. Each brake disc has 8 bolts connected in pairs by safety wires. Our investigators on scene found on the roadway some of the bolts from the fallen brake disc still connected by safety wire. We provided guidance to Metro Rail concerning areas of interest for metallurgical and other investigative activities. In addition to the special checks Metro Rail conducted, Metro Rail is adding recurring torque checks to the bolts and to its preventive maintenance inspections. The investigation will include other elements of the assembly and maintenance practices, coordination of activities through incident command, and other parts of the response to the derailment. We appreciate the collaborative approach on scene with the Metro Rail Safety Department, investigators, and response personnel and vehicle maintenance teams, as well as the Metro Transit Police Department, I should also mention. Our team is also continuing investigations into several other events. These include a series of instances of operators exceeding the maximum allowed speed in the Metro Rail system. This was identified due to one of our staff's observations as a passenger train that appeared to be operating at excessive speed. We alerted Metro Rail and requested data downloads to verify the speed of that train. Metro Rail's rules set the maximum speed limit at 59 miles an hour in most of the system, with 65 miles per hour permitted on specific segments of the Green Line. The data downloads indicated that the train reached 78 miles per hour, 19 miles per hour above Metro Rail's limit. Our further investigation has identified that Metro Rail personnel had previously taken a positive step to create overspeed alerts, but that Metro Rail had not been using these alerts. Metro Rail is now acting on this information, which has led to the identification of additional trains operating at excessive speed. Metro Rail sent a notice to train operators reminding them of speed limits, and this is an example of our proactive work to address issues as regular riders of the system, as well as during our inspections and audits. We are also investigating an event last month near LaFont Plaza Station in which an operator improperly moved against the flow of traffic. Trains came within about 800 feet of one another. As is common, the operator had been instructed to change tracks due to a service disruption ahead. Specifically, the rail traffic controller directed the train operator to move forward to clear an interlocking, reverse ends, and then proceed in the opposite direction, crossing over to the other track. Instead, the operator reversed ends on the same track. Controllers noticed the emergency and communicated urgently to the operator to stop prior to a collision. Our inspections continue to find that Metro Rail is training its staff on outdated rules, in some cases using materials that are a decade or more old that have been superseded. We continue to communicate these issues to Metro Rail and expect them to be addressed. Metro Rail had a long-planned rollout of its new rule book on September 1st, but did not update all related materials and is still using outdated materials in training and testing. Out of 12 classrooms recently inspected, 5 classrooms were found to have outdated rule books. There were 4 editions of outdated rule books found in these 5 classrooms. our inspectors immediately brought the outdated rule books to the attention of training facility management. It's unlikely that Metrorail can achieve a culture of compliance with written rules and procedures without a single set of rules and training materials. Training new train operators on outdated rules also sets those train operators up for unacceptable performance later. We're looking to Metrorail to correct this and will consider further action if needed. On the 7000 series rail cars return to service, Metrorail is resuming its wheelset replacement program this week. Metrorail had paused the program after it determined that it was experiencing too many misfits in its initial wheel press efforts. A misfit occurs when a wheelset pressing process does not meet the required specifications. Most shops that press wheels experience the occasional misfit. Metrorail's determination that there were too many misfits during its initial pressing efforts led Metrorail to develop changes to its program, and Metrorail provided the changes to the WMSC in accordance with our December 2021 order. Metrorail provided new supporting information and resolved outstanding issues, which allowed us last week to provide a no technical objection to the procedure and specification adjustments. This is Metrorail's effort to address one of the issues identified during the National Transportation Safety Board investigation of the October 2021 Blue Line derailment by better aligning the wheelset assembly specifications of the 7000 series rail cars with industry practice, and by implementing the increased wheel and axle interference fit and press tonnage. Metrorail is still working on other elements such as a restraining rail study. We've been closely monitoring Metrorail's work related to roadway worker protection. The WMSC communicated the importance of hazard identification and mitigation and of Metrorail's understanding of the mitigations in place under current rules before it makes further changes to the RWP program. Metrorail subsequently agreed that there were gaps in Metrorail's effort to make additional changes to its RWP program this summer and is committed to restarting the development process of any additional roadway worker protection program changes with a focus on safety risk management and increased interdepartmental coordination. These changes envisioned are in addition to changes Metrorail has implemented over the last year in areas such as foul time and exclusive track occupancy. I want to follow up on an item discussed at the last meeting, the real-world improper roadway worker protection that WMSC staff identified during a full-scale emergency drill at Wheaton Station earlier this year. Last month, our team observed another full-scale emergency exercise at Capitol South Station, and we found that Metrorail had used the lessons learned from the prior event to improve its process. Metrorail conducted practice runs to prevent any similar real-world near miss from occurring during the setup for or conduct of the exercise, and Metrorail also better controlled access to the exercise area. These exercises are important learning opportunities for Metrorail and first responders. Other aspects of our oversight work include our audit and corrective action plan oversight programs. For example, we are continuing to follow up with Metrorail regarding the lead that Metrorail identified in emergency medical cabinets as part of the implementation of a corrective action plan to address a finding from the WMSC's emergency management and fire life safety audit. This includes gathering additional information and Metrorail's subsequent communication with regional responders to ensure their safety once Metrorail provided us with the information. Looking ahead to items on the agenda for the meeting today, Metrorail has submitted its annual revision of its Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan. This is Metrorail's overarching commitment to continuous safety improvement and is a foundation of Metrorail's safe operations. This is the third annual revision to Metrorail's agency safety plan. Metrorail's first agency safety plan, transitioning from the older system safety program plan, took effect in December 2020. This revision is again scheduled to take effect in December. Metrorail developed this revision, provided it to the WMSC staff for review in draft, and subsequent conditional approval in accordance with our program standard. Then Metrorail progressed the revision through its approval process, including the board and the WMATA general manager. This plan contains Metrorail's commitments to safety improvement and a safety management system. Our staff review includes checking the revision against requirements of our program standard and federal regulations. We urge the commissioners to discuss and adopt approval of the plan later today. We will also discuss the draft fiscal year 2025 budget, the WMSC draft fiscal year 2025 budget and work program. And the item for consideration today is transmission of this draft budget to the 3 jurisdictions. We have carefully developed the draft budget to rely on additional federal funding and to focus in a targeted way on those areas of our workload assessment where additional support will drive continuous improvement for us and also for Metro Rail. One area we are continuing to develop is our inspections program. Along with other state safety oversight agencies across the country, in response to new FTA requirements, we are adding to this program. The FTA will be reviewing the inspection program of each state safety oversight agency over the coming year, and the FTA has asked us to present to other state safety oversight agencies next month about our progress on the development of our program. Our presentation will be at the FTA's State Safety Oversight and Rail Transit Agency Joint Conference next month in St. Louis. That concludes my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Meyer. Do any of the commissioners have any questions for Dr. Meyer? I have one that I'd like to put out, and that is, you mentioned speed limits being violated. I'm assuming the speed limits aren't arbitrary. Maybe if you or your staff have a few words for the benefit of the listening audience to what is the significance, what is the importance of speed limits?
I can try to speak to it a little bit, and then maybe I'll pass it to Sharmila or any other members of the staff if anyone else would like to comment. But in rail operations, generally speaking, there is a civil speed limit that is the fastest that it's considered to be safe to operate a train for the given track segment that the train's operating on. There are other speed limits, such as a regulated speed limit that is may still be safe and provide protection from derailment, but is a speed limit that's established for operational reasons. So there are often multiple speed limits, but regardless, for every train being operated in this system or any rail system, there is a maximum speed that's permissible at any time and place. And these train operators or trains were being operated in excess of that speed, and that is a cause for concern with regard to adherence to procedure. Ms. Samarasinga, is there anything that you would want to add to that, or any member of your staff you'd want to call on?
Nothing further to how you described it, Dr. Meyer. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Meyer. Are there any questions from any of the other commissioners? All right, seeing none, we will now move on to our next
I
item.
got one. Sorry,
Oh,
Chair.
I'm sorry.
Our hands are up.
Mr. Rouse has his hand up. Yes.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, please.
There are two hands up, so maybe Commissioner Farrar-Dyke?
No, Commissioner Rouse was first, and
Oh,
I'll be next.
Okay, appreciate it. And thank you, Chair Hart. You addressed one of the questions I had, which was related to the speed control aspect, or civil speeds versus operating speeds. And I think the other point is more of a comment, especially obligated here that Mr. Lobby can't be with us. I think as it relates to wheels, axles, and brakes and things of that nature, I'll probably step in. Just as much for us here, but also probably for those that are certainly listening from WMATA. The wheel press issue is certainly something, I think, as we talk today about the agency safety plan, that's one of those things that you really circle and say, okay, where are the safety critical elements that we really have to keep a close watch on, whether it's part of their quality management plan or any other element within there, making sure they have a good checks and balance for the QA/QC over those activities. Most smaller agencies don't press their own wheels, and so WMATA being a larger one, it's a bit of an exception. And often when you go out and procure new wheel sets for a train, for a locomotive, or for a rail car, you're getting them from a shop that's certified to do that work. And so you have a couple checks and balances. You have that certification aspect through AAR, but you also have your own eyes and looking at the press records before you put it as part of the car history book for that device. When you're your own entity doing all that work, that's where auditing and checking and make sure there's some sort of process for ensuring that people are following the rules appropriately becomes more critical. It's not the person in the field's fault. They're not the engineer designing the tonnage to put on that wheel, but certainly understanding the criticality of that interface and making sure it's done correctly every time and what that can lead to if it's not is something I think collectively between us and WMATA has to be watched very closely moving forward. And in similar vein to the brakes issue that you mentioned as well, right? Torquing nuts and bolts seems like a simple task, but it's becomes critical, and every one you miss can become a problem later down the road. So, thank you. That's all I want to bring up on that issue.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Rouse.
You mentioned that different speed limits had different meanings. So what is the speed limit for derailment?
That is
up to 78. So what, excuse me?
I was just going to say that's dependent on each segment of track would have a maximum civil speed that would be protection against derailment. So I don't know the civil speed limits in the specific area that I was speaking about earlier, just off the top of my head, but there's not one number throughout the system.
It'd be interesting to know what the speed limit for derailment was at that particular instant on the track. Because that would give you a different meaning as to the severity of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that will be part of the investigation that is underway into the event I mentioned, as well as a few others that were discovered, not just the civil speed, but also the maximum regulated speeds that were appropriate and any speed restrictions that may have been levied on top of that, although I don't have any indication that there were any.
Thank you. Any questions from any of the other commissioners? Ms. Silbaugh, FYI, I can't see when hands are raised, so I may be asking your help to tell me who's raised their hands when I ask for people who have questions.
Happy to do so.
Okay, thank you. We will now move on to our next item, which is audits with an update from Deputy Chief Operating Officer Davis Raddick. Davis, Mr. Raddick.
Thank you, Chair Hart. Most recently, last week, we issued our final report for our audit of Metrorail's roadway maintenance machines program. As with each audit report, we issued it after providing a draft report to Metrorail for a 30-day review period and incorporating any additional information from Metrorail as warranted. The WMSC performed this RMM audit by conducting interviews, site visits, document reviews, and data reviews. The scope of this audit was Metrorail's RMM program, and that is the vehicles that move on the rails but that are not designed to carry customers. These vehicles range from the basic, like flat cars used to carry tools, materials, or equipment to a work site, to the complex equipment such as the heavy-duty tamper used to maintain track geometry. The RMM audit identified positive practices as well as some areas where Metrorail is not following its policies and procedures. Among positive practices observed and documented in the report, Metrorail has identified and taken steps to address brake beam failures on certain RMMs and has been transparent about identifying and providing information about its progress. Metrorail has also improved its inspections of contractor vehicles and is progressing toward improved data logging for RMMs. The audit includes 5 findings. First, Metrorail does not ensure the use of adequate fall protection when working on or around roadway maintenance machines, or RMMs. Second, Metrorail is not effectively tracking and mitigating hazards related to RMM maintenance and operations in accordance with its Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan. Third, Metrorail has not documented its practices regarding adjustments to its contractor RMM inspection procedures. Fourth, Metrorail does not have a process and assigned resources to inspect and maintain the high rail gear on high rail vehicles owned by WMATA as required to ensure the vehicle's safe operation. Fifth, Metrorail is not reviewing its RMM related procedures as required. For each finding, Metrorail is required to develop, then implement a corrective action plan. Metrorail is developing those CAPs now to submit for WMSC review and approval prior to implementation. In addition to findings, recommendations are opportunities for safety improvement that do not meet the requirements of a finding. Metrorail must determine whether corrective action is necessary or submit a hazard analysis as justification to accept the level of risk. The audit includes 6 such recommendations. First, Metro Rail has the opportunity to more effectively collect and proactively utilize reliability data to ensure safe and effective operations. Second, Metro Rail can improve safety and reliability by documenting and formalizing a process for starting and checking equipment on a regular basis that is not being regularly used. Third, Metro Rail is utilizing back-to-back gauges for RMM wheel sets that it has determined are insufficient to accurately make such a measurement on other rail vehicles. Fourth, Metro Rail has not implemented a documented process for decommissioning RMMs, including a process to ensure that vehicles to be decommissioned are no longer needed to carry out work activities and that those vehicles are properly and safely disposed of. Fifth, Metro Rail can improve the effectiveness of training and available operational manuals by providing a consistent, complete format that documents operational restrictions and allows personnel to identify where to look for such information, and by incorporating these improvements into a recurring troubleshooting training. Sixth, and finally, Metro Rail has an opportunity to improve safety through effective interdepartmental coordination to fully utilize available safety data, technology, and contracts. WMATA's proposed corrective action plans are due next month. We are developing draft reports for both the audit of Metro Rail's automatic train control and signals, as well as Metro Rail's power systems programs. We expect to transmit the draft of the automatic train control audit in coming weeks for a 30-day review period. An exit conference for the power systems audit was held at the end of August. We are also working on our rail car audit. This covers Metro Rail's work related to the rail cars that do carry passengers. We conducted interviews and site visits starting in mid-December for this audit and continued interviews this month. The audit covers aspects such as maintenance and engineering practices, as well as training and closed corrective action plans. An exit conference for the revenue vehicles audit is planned for next month. We are also beginning work on our next audit, which is roadway worker protection. As with the other audits, this will include document review, interviews, and site visits. Interviews and site visits are planned for after Thanksgiving. As always, we communicate issues that we identify during field observations to Metro Rail personnel. Our audits assess Metro Rail against the relevant criteria, such as the requirements of Metro Rail's Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan, requirements specified in other Metro Rail documents such as SOPs, manuals, and orders, and regulatory requirements. These audits cover all aspects of Metro Rail's Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan over a 3-year period and are designed to proactively identify safety issues. We take steps to ensure Metro Rail personnel feel free to speak openly and transparently with us during each interaction, as this leads to the greatest opportunity for accurate and meaningful recognition of positive practices or areas for improvement. Thank you. That completes this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Raddick. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Mr. Raddick? Okay, hearing and seeing none, we will now take up the next agenda item, which is correct.
I'm sorry,
I have
Chair,
one-
I'm trying to see too. Commissioner Conklin has raised his hand.
I had one quick question. The fall protection, is that fall from the vehicle itself, or is it falling off the roadway, if an elevated roadway or other condition? I was not clear on that.
It's primarily not on the roadway, but while working on the machines in the shops.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that question, Commissioner Conklin. Any further questions for Mr. Raddick?
I see no other hands.
Great, thank you. We will now take up the next agenda item, which is corrective action plans with an update from Ms. Ashley Rhodes. Ms. Rhodes?
Thank you, Chair Hart. Since the last public meeting, we have closed 5 caps and approved 2 new caps for implementation. The 2 new caps approved for implementation since August 8th, C0238 and C0239, address items from the structures audit issued July 25th. When Metrorail develops corrective action plans to address the safety deficiencies identified by WMSC findings and recommendations, or other issues specified by the WMSC program standard, Metrorail submits these plans to the WMSC for review and approval. After Metrorail submits acceptable CAP proposals that will address the safety deficiency, Metrorail is responsible for implementing its corrective action plans on the schedule set forth in the CAP. Metrorail submits records of each actionable item in each CAP after each step is completed. Metrorail's implementation of each of these CAPs improves the safety of the system for riders and workers. Even after a CAP is closed, the WMSC monitors Metrorail's actions on an ongoing basis through our audit, inspection, and other oversight activities. Overall, Metrorail currently has 99 open CAPs that it is in the process of implementing. During that implementation, the WMSC reviews information to verify progress. Metrorail's implementation of each of these CAPs improves the safety of the system for riders and workers. As I mentioned, the WMSC has closed 5 CAPs since the last public meeting. To address a finding from the Rail Operations Control Center audit issued in 2020, that not all rail controllers experience emergency drills, which diminishes the value of the drills, Metrorail implemented CAP C0065. This included a new requirement that Rail Operations Control Center personnel attend at least one full-scale drill or tabletop exercise annually. Metrorail has also created simulated drills. 2 of the closed CAPs relate to findings from the rail operations audit issued last year. Metrorail developed and implemented CAP C0187 to address the finding that Metrorail had not documented procedures for terminal supervisors and had not established effective training for those terminal supervisors to perform their duties. Terminal supervisors control the dispatching of trains at the end of line stations, including remote control of switches and signals. As part of the corrective action plan, Metrorail created a standards manual for terminal supervisors and corresponding training. The training requirement includes initial training and refresher training. Metrorail developed and implemented CAP C0192 to address the finding that Metrorail closes rail operations internal corrective actions and identified issues without fully identifying or completing required improvements or changes. The corrective action included Metrorail updating its quality assurance and quality control process to be able to capture systemic findings and providing root cause analysis training to its rail transportation QA/QC personnel. The changes include a commitment to only close QA/QC corrective actions when a quality control officer is satisfied that implementation is complete. One of the closed CAPs addresses an area identified as a recommendation in the high voltage and traction power audit issued in 2021. The audit identified that Metrorail risked equipment quality and availability issues that impact operational safety due to gaps in materials tracking, storage, and procurement practices. Metrorail developed a corrective action plan that included assessing its materials storage areas, conducting a resource assessment, and creating a process for monthly inventory reviews. Metrorail implemented a larger warehouse and incorporated parts for high and low voltage power into its process. Finally, Metrorail completed implementation of one CAP related to the station maintenance, elevator, and escalator audit issued last year. This addressed the finding that Metrorail had not reviewed its standard operating procedures on a regular basis as required by WMATA policy and had conflicting procedures for elevator and escalator employees. To implement CAP C0202, Metrorail updated over 30 standard operating procedures and implemented a master document control log that notes the date each SOP was revised and the date its next review is due by. Thank you. That completes this presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Rhodes. Do any of the commissioners have any questions for Ms. Rhodes?
I see no hands.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Silbaugh. We will now move on to our next agenda item, which is an update on some of WMSC's latest activities overseeing Metro Rail's safety certification process. Ms. Samara Singha.
Thank you, Chair Hart. Metrorail's safety certification process is a critical element of Metrorail's safety management system. Identifying and understanding failure modes or hazards and proactively mitigating the likelihood and severity of those hazards in a systemic way, as documented in Metrorail's own policy and procedures, provides for the overall safety of the Metrorail system. Metrorail implements its safety certification program. We, WMSC, oversee Metrorail's work through field observations, document and data review, and regular meetings with Metrorail, as well as by observing the discussions among Metrorail safety certification committees and working groups. Metrorail is required to carry out this work for each of its projects that meet its criteria for safety certification. In accordance with our program standard, we designate specific projects for WMSC's in-depth review of Metrorail safety certification activities. For these projects, Metrorail may not activate the asset or area in service until the WMSC concurs that Metrorail has conducted its safety certification process, including hazard identification and any mitigations or corrective actions. Projects currently under our in-depth review include Metrorail's new 8000 series railcars, Metrorail's automated wayside inspection system, and Metrorail's work related to the automatic train operation and automatic door operation projects. We monitor Metrorail safety certification working groups, documentation, and other activities. We have been overseeing Metrorail's work related to the automatic train operation and automatic door operation for several years. Metrorail is currently working specifically on automatic door operation efforts. Automatic door operation is separate from automatic train operation, and Metrorail's safety certification work on automatic door operation is specific to that system. It does not include ATO, or automatic train operation. We have conducted and observed weekly meetings, observed Metrorail's field activities, and have been in continuous contact with Metrorail's project team and other personnel on this project. As Dr. Meyer mentioned, following WMSC feedback, Metrorail made adjustments to its work over the last several months. Metrorail has specifically focused on automatic door operation with a setting where the doors would be intended to open automatically on the correct side when a train properly berths in a station, and the train operator would then manually close the doors by pressing the door close button when boarding is complete. Metrorail has conducted testing and other activities and is continuing training for personnel. Metrorail completed the safety certification steps required to begin train operator certification on automatic door operation in passenger service on the Red Line last week. Each of these operators is required to first undergo computer-based training. That is one of the mitigations in Metrorail's temporary use notice for this limited use of automatic door operations on the Red Line. Metrorail developed such a temporary use notice, specifying the mitigations it would carry out for these certifications, and subsequently revised that temporary use notice and provided additional supporting information. That allowed us to concur that Metrorail had met its safety certification requirements to utilize automatic door operations in passenger service on the Red Line for train operator certification, with the specific mitigations in place. Our concurrence was required because this project is under our in-depth review, and Metrorail planned to activate the system in passenger service for segments of 6 stations at a time as part of the train operator certification. We are monitoring Metrorail certification and training activities. Metrorail has told the WMSC that once it meets its safety certification requirements, it aims to utilize automatic door operations on the Red Line as a regular mode of operation. We look forward to Metrorail completing this safety certification work, which will allow us to provide our concurrence with that use of automatic door operations on the Red Line. That completes my presentation. Thank you very much, Chair Hart.
Thank you, Ms. Samarasinha. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Ms. Samarasinha?
Yes, we have both Commissioner Conklin and Commissioner Rouse.
Yes, please.
Thank you for the report on the automated door operation. I was curious what the risks of the automated door operation are that we would be concerned about.
The overarching risk that we have communicated to Metro on is to be mindful of ensuring that all the system upgrades, all the system checks have been completed prior to them completing the work associated with safety certification. That is a requirement, and we have asked them to be very diligent about accomplishing that. Aside from that, the other concerns are associated with doors opening on the wrong side, or doors opening when when the train is not properly berthed at the station.
Thank you. That was what I was curious about.
Just to be clear, we don't see that happening. We are monitoring for it because it would be the hazard that needs to be controlled. I see Commissioner Rouse's hand is up.
Yeah, thank you for that report. Also, you mentioned projects that you identify for in-depth review. And obviously new rail cars, train control systems would fit into that. But you also mentioned the Metrorail automated wayside inspection system, which I'm not really familiar with in terms of its purpose here. Can you talk as to why that falls into the in-depth category? And is it intended to replace current inspections, or is it really intended to supplement inspections today?
Commissioner Rouse, so the system we are referring to is the Automated Wayside Inspection System with an acronym of AWIS. And this technology was something that Metrorail was evaluating in early January 2022 as a mechanism that will help them support back-to-back measurements on the 7000 series rail cars. And so the expectation here is that the automated wayside inspection system, once safety certified and once we have provided the concurrence for them to activate it in revenue use, that this will provide the necessary support for conducting back-to-back measurements of 7000 series rail cars on an ongoing basis. Of course, we have made sure that Metrorail understands that there are many components to ensuring that safety certification is undertaken accurately and precisely as their program calls for, which includes ensuring that there are all the procedures in place, that the information that's generated by these various devices throughout the system produce the data that is accurate and repeatable, and there is a mechanism to detect when the data is not accurate and not repeatable. And so there is much work to be done. Metrorail is working on the safety certification effort presently. They are looking to installing these automated wayside inspection locations throughout the system, spread out across all of the lines that are in existence today. I hope that answered your question. If not, please prompt me for anything additional that you might require.
Yeah, no, that's very helpful. I'm curious, is it intended just to supplement the visual inspections that they're also going to perform, or is it going to?
So this would be part of the procedures and processes that they are yet to write in terms of the utilization of this technology. And so at this time, I'm unable to specify exactly whether it will be a secondary system or whether it will be a primary system.
Okay, thank you. I mean, it's certainly something I think the entire industry, at least in the US, is looking at moving more towards. And so interested to see how we walk through this with Metro. Thank you.
Of course, thank you.
Thank you for those questions. Any other questions from any of the other commissioners? If not, I have one, and that is that your reference to the automatic door opening was all red line. Are there any plans underway to expand that to the entire system?
Yes,
So there's not enough to speak about yet? It's too early in its development, or what?
that is correct, Chair Hart. The focus presently is on the red line, and as we have worked on the red line with in-depth review of the entirety of the project, our efforts will be similar as Metro plans on expanding this to the rest of the system as that progresses.
So is there anything about the red line that gives it priority of purpose, or how did it get selected as first?
The red line in most for most illustrative purposes is a captive system. While it does have some connectivity to other lines of the system, it is really one that operates in isolation. And so typically, historically, Metro has used the red line as the test bed for introducing, activating, testing out new technologies. And so that's the same in this instance because of its captive nature.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Samarasinghe. Any further questions for Ms. Samarasinghe?
No more hands.
Thank you. Okay, hearing none, we will now move on to safety event investigation reports that are being presented today. We will hear presentations on all of the reports and then consider a single motion on all the reports that we are prepared to adopt. If any commissioner wishes to remove a report from the group that we will be considering for adoption in a single vote, please indicate that at the end of the presentation of that report. Investigation Program Manager Adam Quigley, will you please present the first report?
Thank you, Chair Hart. Investigation Whiskey 0242 relates to a serious injury in the New Carrollton Rail Yard on April 23rd, 2023. A Metro Rail contractor working on a slope slipped and cut themselves with a chainsaw. This resulted in a serious injury to their right leg. The worker was not wearing chainsaw chaps, personal protective equipment that could have, at minimum, reduced the severity of the injury. The worker was part of a crew cutting vegetation with a Metro Rail roadway worker in charge present. When the worker slipped and was injured, the roadway worker in charge stopped all work and reported the emergency. In an investigative interview, the injured worker said they had resumed work after lunch without putting the protective equipment on. The worker was released from the hospital later that same day. Metro Rail developed and distributed information about the use of proper PPE when using chainsaws. The company committed to additional safety monitoring and supervision and conducted a safety stand down. Thank you. That completes this presentation.
I see no hands with questions. Didn't want to
Okay.
jump in front of you though, Chair.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Mr. Quigley, was that a subcontractor?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. So no questions from the commissioners, and we'll move on to the next one. And that one is also you, Mr. Quigley.
Thank you, Chair Hart. Investigation Whiskey 0243 relates to the serious injury of a Metro Rail contractor during the final stages of construction at the Potomac Yard Station on April 17th, 2023. A worker installing a sign fell from a ladder and broke their arm. That worker and another worker were on separate 8-foot A-frame ladders. A third worker was handing them the sign to hang on a building. With only 3 workers, there were not enough personnel to have someone on the ground to stabilize each ladder. In addition, the ladders were on uneven gravel. The contractor company's foreman was not present when the injury occurred. They stopped work and conducted a safety briefing before work resumed. Metro Rail completed the work on Potomac Yard Station necessary to safely open the station to passengers a few weeks later. The WMSC concurred that Metro Rail had met the requirements of its safety certification process, and the station opened to passengers in May of 2023. It is important that Metro Rail ensures that personnel at any of its work locations or following mitigations in job hazard analysis, including the safe use of ladders. Thank you. That completes his presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Quigley. Do any commissioners have any questions for Mr. Quigley on this one?
Commissioner Conklin has raised his hand.
Just a procedural question. In this case, was the station accepted from the contractor by Metro Rail, or was this when the station was still in its pre-acceptance phase? Just curious where the responsibility for the worker safety lied in this case. Was it under Metro Rail supervision, or was it in advance of that?
Sharmo, do we know? I think Metro was running the project at that stage. If that answers your question, sir.
That does it. I just wasn't sure how it related to the contract delivery method here. Thank you.
Any further questions from any of the commissioners?
I see no other hands.
Thank you, Ms. Silbaugh. In that case, Mr. Quigley, would you please present the remaining reports?
Absolutely. There are 4 final investigation reports related to evacuations for life safety reasons. These are classified as accident level events requiring investigation by federal regulation and therefore by our program standard to identify casual factors, assess the response, and identify appropriate corrective actions if needed. Investigation Whiskey 0244 relates to an evacuation of Fort Totten Station on April 18th, 2023 due to potential explosives discovered off Metro Rail property. The station later reopened. Investigation Whiskey 0245 relates to an evacuation of Crystal City Station on March 16th, 2023. This was due to smoke from an escalator near the end of its useful life. The escalator's drive system shifted and contacted the main drive sprocket and step tracks. This apparently created enough heat to ignite accumulated dirt and grease. The deluge system activated and the station manager responded. Metro Rail issued a reminder to escalator mechanics regarding preventive maintenance and inspections and provided specific coaching to the personnel who are responsible for this unit. Since this event, Metro Rail has also progressed implementation of corrective action plans related to the station maintenance, elevator, and escalator audit. Investigation Whiskey 0246 relates to the evacuation of Pentagon City Station on April 9th, 2023. This was due to a fire in the space between the parapet wall at the back of the platform and the station vault. The fire started when a rider discarded a cigarette into that area, where there was an accumulation of trash and debris. A train operator reported the smell of smoke at 5:53 p.m. and the rail traffic controller instructed all train operators to turn off their environmental ventilation system when entering the station. Ventilation fans were activated by Maintenance Operations Center personnel at 5:55 p.m. and the station manager was sent to investigate. The station manager identified the location of the fire and attempted to extinguish it with a fire extinguisher, but was not able to put the fire out. ROC personnel did not notify Metro Transit Police of the event as required by Metro Rail procedure. However, at 6:04 p.m., after being notified of the event by Arlington County, MTPD dispatched personnel to the station and the mission assurance coordinator in the ROC notified MTPD that the station had been evacuated. Fire and police personnel arrived at the station at 6:06 p.m. Metro Transit Police Department personnel initially established a separate incident command. During this time, trains were allowed to continue traveling through the station without stopping, despite active smoke and fire behind parapet wall. At 6:15 p.m., firefighters reported worsening conditions, and the mission assurance coordinator advised that trains should no longer operate through the station. MTPD personnel experienced radio communication challenges and noted that it became necessary to use cell phones to communicate during this event due to poor radio transmission quality. A second fire location later occurred in a trash can after a Metro Rail plant maintenance employee disposed of still smoldering materials. That fire was also extinguished. At about 6:32 p.m., the fire department reported that the fire had been extinguished. There were no injuries or damage reported due to this event. Metro Rail is implementing revised incident command procedures as part of WMSC CAP 0162 and is implementing another corrective actions related to similar safety events that are intended to address removal of trash and debris behind parapet walls. Finally, investigation Whiskey 0247 relates to an evacuation of the Greenbelt Rail Yard Rail Car Service and Inspection Shop on April 18th, 2023. This was the result of a gas leak from the regulator on a Washington gas meter. Due to the report of a similar issue 5 days earlier, Washington Gas had been scheduled to address the meter on the day this occurred. Washington Gas replaced the manifold. Thank you. That completes my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Quigley. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Mr. Quigley?
Commissioner Conklin has raised his hand.
Sorry
Yes,
if I'm
Mr.
asking too many questions. I was curious about the radio communication in the Pentagon City fire situation. And my assumption would be that areas of difficult radio communication would be understood in advance of an event. And I was curious if you had any information about what the cause of the radio challenges were, or whether it was an area of known difficulty already.
I believe it is a known area of having issues before. We're trying to get through the comm department and address these known locations through the comm audit. And again, there's many known areas and that are kind of been identified, and we continue to support Metro in resolving these issues. But it's something that we're addressing through our comm audit.
Was
Could
that
you say
something
a little
that
more
there's a
about the
standard
comm audit?
procedure when the radio communication challenge occurs? There's a certain telephone-based procedure. Is that what I understand from your report?
I can't answer to Transit's procedures now. Archer Rail, the go-to is the ETS box phones if radio communications are poor, to use the ETS boxes that are every I think it's 600 or 800 feet along the roadway.
And when Mr. Quigley says transit, he of course means transit police.
Oh, yeah.
Could you or Ms. Samar Singh just say a few words? You also mentioned a comm audit, and our new commissioners may not be familiar with that.
Jermella.
Sure. So as you heard, Davis Rattick provide an overview of the triennial audits underway. Throughout our triennial a 3-year cycle of conducting audits, one of the areas that we've conducted audits in is radio communications. And this was conducted last year. And one of the outcomes of that radio communications audit was addressing several gaps in terms of radio communication failures and how they need to be resolved, and our understanding of various aspects about the fact that radio communication failures happen as a result of either the known disrupted areas not being fully evaluated and the work orders associated with those trouble spots being closed out, or there not being proper oversight of the work being conducted to ensure that issues are resolved permanently. So that is what Adam Quigley is referring to as the communications audit, and the findings that arose out of it that address the training aspect in resolving radio communications issues, the actual work conducted to resolve radio communications issues, as well as the quality assurance and supervisory oversight of the work being done appropriately so that these issues do not keep repeating. I hope that I answered your question, Commissioner Conklin, and if not, please let me know what areas you would want me to focus on.
I have to join
We
in on
also
that
have-
frustration that it seems like so many times we hear about radio communications failures, and that's been going on for decades. And I just don't understand why it's so difficult. I know there are a lot of moving parts here, but and everybody's got different frequencies and all that, but it just seems like that should be a solvable problem.
And Chair Hart, Commissioner Rouse also has his hand raised.
Yes, Commissioner Rouse.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, I'm with Commissioner Conklin here in the lots of questions group, so I apologize for everybody else here.
No apology necessary.
Get through
We thrive on the questions.
Yeah, this will be on the Crystal City Station one, our favorite topic, escalators and elevators, or one of them anyways. Question on, it looked like from the report itself, there was an issue with the part failing, obviously was identified as the root cause, but they alluded to issues in terms of the previous inspection and whether or not everything that was supposed to be inspected was actually inspected, and whether or not they were following OEM recommendations. And if you can't speak on that, that's okay. But that would be one of my primary question is, there's parts fail, that's fine. But if there's a systemic issue related to the performance of the inspection that should have caught one of those failures before it occurred, that's a bigger issue, in terms of the longer term planning of how to avoid having these things happen in the future. Do you know if there was any issue in that regard, or was that just a suggested additional, let's retrain our folks, make sure they're looking at the right things?
It was just to highlight that part that they had found that contributed to the event. So they wanted to make sure to highlight that for the preventive maintenance inspectors. So when they're under there and they're doing the preventive maintenance, that they, especially focus on that part, due to this event.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner Rouse. Any further questions from any of the commissioners?
I don't see any other hands.
Thank you, Ms. Silva. Then that completes today's investigation report presentations. Is there a motion to adopt the investigation reports that have just been presented? And that is 6 altogether: Whiskey 0242, 0243, 0244, 0245, 0246, and 0247. Is there a motion to adopt those 6 reports?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Bob. Is there a second to that motion?
I second.
Thank you, Commissioner Farrar Dyke. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say yay.
Yay.
Okay.
All opposed, please raise your hand and say nay.
The vote is 6 yeas and 0 nays. So the motion to adopt the investigation reports as presented passes.
Okay, thank you, Ms.
Chair Hart,
Silva. Yes,
if I could just very briefly just jump in to say that I wanted to comment that we do hear the commissioners loud and clear with respect, no pun intended, with respect to the radio communications challenges that were discussed a little bit ago. This is something that's important to Metro Rail safety, important to the region, and of course, important to us. It's something we've also engaged on both throughout the main line and in yards over the course of our time. So we will get our thoughts together on where we've come in radio communication and maybe even the road ahead, and find an opportunity to share that with the commissioners as well.
thank you, Dr. Meyer. That's very much needed, and I appreciate the thought. We will now move on to resolutions and other actions. First, we will consider Metro Rail's Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan that Dr. Meyer mentioned we were going to be looking at and approving today. This plan lays out Metro Rail's commitment to a strong safety culture that reaches everyone from frontline workers and supervisors to executive management. Metro Rail is required to review and update this plan at least annually. The WMSC oversees Metro Rail's implementation of this plan and is required to review any updates that Metro Rail makes. Ms. Samar Singha, did you have anything else to add?
Yes, thank you, Chair Hart. As Dr. Meyer mentioned, this is Metro Rail's 3rd annual revision to its agency safety plan, or PTASP. The WMATA Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan includes sections related to Metro Bus, Metro Access. However, our oversight is specific to sections that are applicable in some way to Metro Rail, as we do not oversee Metro Bus or Metro Access. Each revision of Metro Rail's agency safety plan must meet WMSC requirements and federal regulations. To ensure that, Metro Rail's changes must be approved by the WMSC, and we are therefore presenting them for your vote today. To provide for a productive process, our program standard requires that Metro Rail obtain conditional approval from the WMSC staff prior to progressing the revisions through its final approvals process. Metro Rail steps include approval by Metro Rail's Joint Labor and Management Safety Committee, approval by Metro Rail's accountable executive, the general manager, and WMATA Board of Directors. To highlight some of the other work that has occurred, the WMSC staff reviewed and provided feedback on multiple drafts of the WMATA's agency safety plan revision for compliance with our program standard and federal regulations. This led up to this final version that is before you today. In accordance with our program standard, the WMSC staff transmitted conditional approval to Metrorail on August 23rd. The WMATA board voted to approve this agency safety plan revision on September 28th. The agency safety plan is required to include a safety management system or SMS approach. This system includes Metrorail's continually evaluating the effectiveness of its mitigations, supporting the identification of new hazards, and determining the need for new controls. This requires training, communication, and other actions to create a positive safety culture at all levels of the workforce. The goal of a safety management system is to be proactive by identifying and addressing issues before an accident occurs, and by ensuring continuous learning and open dialogue. The agency safety plan objectives are safety, accountability, increased use of data, and a clear commitment that every employee, from the frontline worker to the supervisor to managers and to the executive leaders, are accountable for upholding the commitments to safety. This also includes clear direction on how each person at Metrorail can meet this safety responsibility. Updates in this year's revision include organizational changes that Metrorail initiated in December 2022, which included moving multiple departments to report to different executive leaders. Among those changes, Metrorail assigned its primary technical training department and its quality assurance office to report to the Chief Safety and Readiness Officer. Metrorail also continues to commit in this agency safety plan to a just culture approach and to improving its voluntary safety reporting programs. Alongside those safety reporting improvements, Metrorail commits to continuing to improve its safety committees and to better incorporate them into the overall safety management process. In accordance with our program standard and federal regulation, the PTASP also includes safety performance targets. The WMSC ensures Metrorail is meeting the requirements of its agency safety plan through our audits, inspections, and other oversight. Metrorail's other documented policies and procedures are implemented under the umbrella of this agency safety plan, this high-level document. Overseeing and checking Metrorail's implementation of these documented safety commitments is a basic element of our program standard and a basic responsibility specified in the WMSC Compact. When Metrorail makes safety commitments, we expect Metrorail to follow those commitments. If the WMSC identifies that Metrorail is not following its safety requirements, then we take the necessary action to require Metrorail to correct that safety issue. As I mentioned, as the safety oversight agency for Metrorail, the WMSC must approve Metrorail's agency safety plan revision before it can be implemented. A vote to approve the plan today means that the commissioners concur with WMSC's staff assessment that the plan complies with the federal law and regulations. The plan is sufficiently explicit process for safety risk management with adequate means of risk mitigation. The plan includes a process and timeline for annual reviews and updates. The plan includes a comprehensive staff training program for operations personnel directly responsible for safety. The plan identifies an adequately trained safety officer who reports to the general manager, and that the plan includes adequate methods to be executed, and that the plan has been approved by the WMATA Board of Directors. That completes my update. And if there are any questions, thank you very much, Chair Hart.
Thank you, Ms. Amarasinghe. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners or any discussion from any of the other commissioners on this plan?
I see no hands.
I would like to give kudos to Dr. Meyer and his staff for pursuing this. This is a long, complicated process, and they're pursuing it to completion each year and helping to implement the continuous improvement that we're all striving for. Is there a motion to adopt Resolution R 2023-6 approving the WMATA Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan revision effective December 31st, 2023? Is there a motion?
So moved.
So moved. Commissioner Bruley, thank you. Is there a second? Commissioner Bob, second, thank you. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say yay. Yay.
Yay.
Any opposed, please raise your hand and say nay.
Thank you, commissioners. The vote again is 6 yeas and no nays. Therefore, the motion to adopt resolution R-2023-06 passes, thereby adopting the revision to WMATA's agency safety plan as presented.
Thank you, Ms. Silbaugh. The next item on our agenda is consideration of the draft fiscal year 2025 budget and work program. Secretary Treasurer Farrar Dyke, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Hart. The Finance Committee has reviewed this draft budget and work program and recommends the commissioners approve transmitting this draft to the funding jurisdictions in accordance with the WMSC's master funding agreement. Mr. Angie, could you provide a brief summary to all?
Thank you, Secretary Treasurer Farrar Dyke. This draft budget and work program covers the fiscal year that starts July 1, 2024. It considers the WMSC's workload and responsibilities, our continuous improvement, and the available funding. The draft budget projects that 43% of our program will be covered by federal funds in fiscal year 2025, an increase from 36% in the current fiscal year. We continue to follow our 5-year spending plan for each federal formula grant. This means that we utilize the funds from each grant over a 5-year period. In total, the draft budget is $7.3 million. As Secretary Treasurer Farrar Dyke noted, the Finance Committee recommended approving the transmission of this draft budget and work plan. With Commissioner approval today, we will transmit this to the jurisdictions for their budget planning process by the end of the year, or excuse me, by the end of this month. That's ahead of the deadline in the master funding agreement. This draft assists the jurisdictions in their budget process and ensures that our team is prepared to most effectively continue to build on the work we are conducting day in and day out. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Treasurer Farrar Dyke. And Mr. Ainge, is there a motion to adopt resolution 2023-7 approving transmission of the fiscal year 2025 draft budget and work program?
So moved.
Commissioner Bob moved. Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, I didn't see who gave that.
Commissioner
That was
Rouse,
me.
seconded.
Commissioner Rouse, thank you. Okay, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye, say yay. Yay.
Yay.
Any opposed, please raise your hand and say nay.
So again, Chair, the vote is 6 yeas, 0 nays. So the motion to adopt resolution 2023-07 passes, thereby approving fiscal year 2025 draft budget and work program as it was presented. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Silbaugh. And that completes our meeting for today. As a reminder, you can always report any concerns through our website, wmsc.gov, through our social media channels, or by email. I'd like to thank Dr. Meyer and his staff for all of their hard work to continuously improve the safety of Metro Rail. And I would like to thank them for their presentations in this meeting. I'd also like to thank the commissioners for being so engaged in the process and in this meeting in particular. And finally, would like to thank the members of the public who attended this meeting. We expect to hold our next public meeting on December 12th, 2023. Hearing no further business, the meeting is adjourned.